The problem is that the um, globalization has winners and losers, and if we look at globalization as being the economic act of open borders and the consequences of that, then and we look at globalism. Globalism is actually the political movement, the idea of promoting globalization and telling people that globalization is good for us, and that it rises the GDP, and with the rise in GDP, more jobs will be created, and more jobs will mean that the income will rise across the board. But that's not the real story. A lot of people have by now have figured that globalization and new technology has led to a decrease in pay for many people. Many blue collar workers, but also white collar workers, are soon to be confronted with the effects of an improvement in technology with the AI and robotics and what have you. These things are bound to change, and people are threatened, because the reality is that actually only a small group of people is really benefiting from these trends, digital transformation and the open borders, and then there is a deep divide within many societies about between the winners and the losers of these developments, and the winners are being accused of being this elite group, and this idea of the elite group who's taking advantage of people who are taking it all, who are not willing to share the benefits of new technology, not sharing the benefits of these open borders, and who creating these artificial walls that will make sure that their kids will benefit, not and other people are basically standing on the sideline waiting for things to happen, but they will never be part of that elite group. So that is a development that actually gives rise to populism. We see populism in the United States. Donald Trump, who is really appealing to the idea that globalization is costing blue-collar workers, regular workers in the United States, the cornerstone of the U.S. society, to lose their position, and he's trying to push back on this development. He's pointing at Mexican immigrants. He's pointing at unfair trade practices from China. He's pointing at many other ways, and he's trying to forcefully renegotiate every agreement that exists on a bilateral base. So that is what Trump is doing. He's not uniting. He's basically dividing people. We see in Europe that there is also a rise in populism, and that is not so much because there is such a big gap between rich and poor, but it's more related to the fact that many people are losing, and they feel that this rise in immigration is unjustified, because the state cannot even take care of its own people, let alone that we are welcoming others into our society. So there's this big anti-movement, the Yellow Vests. There is Marine Le Pen. There is Geert Wilders. There is the Five-Star Movement. There are so many movements that are trying to reach those people. This is a political field that is now widely open. So how are we going to resolve this? So today we will finalize the video of Ian Bremmer, and then we will move on to one of the possible solutions, which is the universal base income. Okay, so having said that, let's continue the movie of basically the panel discussion of not the panel discussion, the interview with Ian Bremmer. Oi. I think we were much further than that, at least 40 minutes ahead. I think we were around here. Ah, not? Again? That's strange.
What happened?
Hey, I'm sharing. Yeah, I am sharing. Kikoeru? I am sharing.
No, not share. This is
Not
not,
share?
not sign. This is recording sign. This was sharing.
Ah.
Okay.
これで OK?
Yeah.
OK. Yes.
Okay.
But it is early. These are small. We don't have the data. Again, let me give you the climate example. 30, 40 years ago, we didn't know it was going to work. Today, turns out solar power is cheaper than coal in the daytime. It's scalable. That's awesome. Now, to be clear, the total amount of renewables going into China energy is only keeping up with China energy growth. So their percentage that comes out of the ground, right, from oil and gas and coal is exactly the same now as it was 10 years ago. But that's going to start to change. So we can now see that the most challenging global problem out there, the fact that our global climate has already increased by 1 Celsius, and in Canada it's 1.7, is something that human beings have now invested enough in technologically that we can start to see what some of the answers are going to look like. Now, a hell of a lot of people are going to suffer that didn't need to get from here to there. But the planet and humanity is not going to go extinct, right? And that actually, and not even close. And that actually kind of matters. So I am not someone who looks at this problem and says, we can't deal with this. But I am someone who knows that you don't get the best out of human beings until you force us to get to flow state, until you press us to something that actually feels challenging to us. For good and for bad, we are, over the coming generation, going to be experiencing that kind of pressure.
That's an optimistic message, I think, in many ways, given that we've been talking about the pessimism of the book and also the experiments that you provide a way out of a complete dysfunctional state. The one part of the book I found very interesting was where you discuss all the multiple different countries. And we become so accustomed here to thinking of, oh, China, that's a factory, and they have all the same interest, or India's software. But we realize that it's much more, reading that I realized that it's much more complex within all of these different countries. And there are winners and losers from globalization there, and many of the fault lines of us versus them are being created in many of these different countries. So could you speak to, well, there are, I think, 12 there, but could you speak to maybe 1 or 2 or 3 of the countries where a similar situation, a more complex situation exists than we typically think?
Well, I mean, a couple close to home, which are interesting. I mean, Mexico and Brazil are two where this democracies that are emerging markets that you definitely see this playing out. I mean, in Brazil, you have Bolsonaro, who just won. His first trip as Brazilian president was to come and meet with Trump. No Brazilian president has ever gone to the United States first before. So that shows an alignment, right? In part, it came because of extraordinary corruption in Brazil that was excavated by this Lava Jato or car wash scandal that led to the impeachment of President Dilma Rousseff, the arrest and indictment of President Lula da Silva, and an ongoing series of cases against the former President Michel Temer. And hundreds of ministers and former ministers and CEOs and all the rest caught up in this. So again, one of the things I love about Lava Jato in Brazil is you look at the United States and it makes us look really functional as a political system when you see just how bad Brazil is. But, you know, in Brazil, it's really been an anti-corruption thing. In Brazil, it's been a middle class that feels like these people are not taking care of us in terms of basic human services, that are, there's no security on the streets, the police are corrupt and they're not taking care of us. Our infrastructure, our basic infrastructure around transit is appalling and abysmal and not taking care of us. And so we want someone who's completely outside of the norm. And they picked this fairly robustly, right-wing, populist, former military guy, Jair Bolsonaro. In Mexico, very similar, massive security problems with the drug war, enormous corruption, inequality that felt like growth in Mexico wasn't leading to help for the middle class or the working class, and they instead voted for this far left-wing candidate, Andrés Manuel López Obrador, who promised no more corruption. One of the first things he did was he sold the presidential plane, and he opened the presidential compound to the public, the outside and the inside. Come on in. And he's got 86% approval ratings right now. Right? Now, the interesting thing about Mexico and Brazil is, unlike in the United States, these anti-establishment forces are not against free trade. They're in favor of free trade. Because in their countries, NAFTA and TPP and all of this actually helped. That wealth was providing more jobs for people whose wages were comparatively low. It was bringing them up the scale. So, López Obrador, who was seen as this raving leftist that was closer to Chavez and Castro than he was to the United States and the Washington Consensus, but he had no problem with negotiating with Trump and Lighthizer a new NAFTA, because Mexico needs NAFTA. And that's very popular on the left and on the right. So I think that's kind of interesting.
So Ian, there's so much in your book. There's so many other questions we'd love to ask you. I'd love to ask you.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Okay.
I go out.
Okay. So what Bremmer is talking about, that even though there are clear countries, there are countries who are clearly dysfunctional, who even though they are in abysmal situation, not everybody is against this free trade movement. What we see in the United States, what we see in Europe, what we see across the board, it's not like the developing world is against free trade. Basically, free trade brought Brazil a lot of good things. Clearly, there are winners and there are losers, but across the board, a country like Brazil and a country like Mexico, even though they are in a bad situation, they're very much in favor of free trade, and they welcome it. Obviously, NAFTA was beneficial for Mexico, and Trump clearly realized that and tried to renegotiate. And NAFTA has been renegotiated to be more balanced, but NAFTA has been functioning quite well, especially for a country like Mexico. They, as a benefit of NAFTA, a lot of manufacturing has been outsourced to Mexico because there were significant cost benefits, and the costs of logistics is not that significant if you think about the fact that Mexico is basically the backyard of the United States. So that has been used widely, and it has brought jobs to Mexico. So even Mexico, even though it's a leftist regime, even though leftist regimes who are inherently against United States and capitalism, they see that free trade has done a lot of good to stimulate the economy in their country. So they are perfectly willing to negotiate with Trump and make sure that they can benefit from globalization. That is for sure. So it's not that there is an anti-globalist movement across the world. No, there are countries who are clearly benefiting from it. The reality is that there are also winners and losers in Mexico, also winners and losers in Brazil, but across the board the benefits so clearly outweigh the negative effects that these countries are actually in favor of globalization. Okay?
About some of the government responses to this failure of globalism. You talked about the social contract, remaking of the social contract. We could talk about walls, and hopefully some of the other content will come out. But in the interest of moving to opening to audience questions, so get your questions ready, I'll ask one final question from the two of us. Why does this matter? So we have a group of students in front of us. Most of you, raise your hand if you're a business student. Okay, virtually everybody's a business student. So why does this conversation about globalism, the failure of globalism, globalization, world affairs, why does this matter to an accounting student, a finance student, a marketing student? And what can our students do to prepare for their role in the global economy?
Well, the main reason it matters, it's a fairly simple one, is that for much of all of us in this room, older generations and younger, we are used to living in a world where the United States is able to determine the rules of the road in the global economy and the rules of the road for global technology. We're not in that world anymore. So even though I said the US is not in decline, we are not. Our influence globally is. Our ability, so you look at China, 800 million people online right now, and some of the most important companies in the world, Amazon, Google, Facebook, have no access to the most important internet market. That's not a global free market. So if we don't pay more attention to what's happening in our own economy and political system and the global economy, if we're not leading by example anymore, and other countries are big enough that they can drive rule set, suddenly all of us in business have a smaller pie to work out of. So it's going to affect you, right? I mean, we don't have to pay. It would have been nice to pay attention to the rest of the world 20, 30 years ago because, we are all human beings and we should care. But, let's face it, 3 million refugees from Venezuela, but they're Venezuelan, they're not coming here. How much does it bother us? 5 million from Syria, but they're Syrian, they're not coming here. How much does it bother us? But when we're in a world where if we say we want something and other countries can say no and they don't listen to us, Xi Jinping goes to Italy and he says, you want to join Belt and Road? And the Italians hear from the Americans, don't you dare join Belt and Road? And they join anyway. G7 economy, ally of the United States. Suddenly life looks a little different. So, we kind of have to pay attention because we're going to be made to pay attention. Right? Because suddenly, if you can't force people to do it your way, it really behooves you out of your own self-interest to understand what the other way is. And we're increasingly going to be in a marketplace, and not a level marketplace, of global ideas. Ideas for political system, ideas for economic system. And also because this is really going to affect who the gatekeepers and stakeholders are in our country, and you want to be one of them, then you want to know what's driving that. I tell people inside my firm that first you need content. Whatever your field is, if you don't have content, you don't have a base of knowledge, you're not going anywhere because you got to be interested and talk to the people that are out there. But on top of content, it's not enough to have content. Then you need communication skills. You have to be able to actually take that content and make it matter to people that are important and relevant to you and your job and your field and everything else. That's not enough. You can have great content, great communication skills, but then you need access to gatekeepers. Because if you have great content and great communication skills, but you're not in front of the people that actually really matter to determine who is going to get the good job or the contract or the benefit, then it's not helping you. You're not going anywhere. And all three of those integrated becoming much more important even in our country because of us versus them. So that's why you got to pay attention.
Great message. We'll leave it there for now. We would like to open up to questions. We have 2 standing mics, so if you have a question, I'm going to ask you to come up to the mic. Feel free to make a line behind the two mics so that we can get through as many questions as possible. When you do approach the mic and it's your turn, please introduce yourself and ask your question.
Doesn't have to be about the book. Current affairs, stuff in the news. I mean, anyone that follows me knows, like, anything. Let's make this fun and lively and challenging, okay?
Can we ask about the Red Sox?
No, because most people here don't care about the Red Sox. So let's, anyone care? Someone care about the Red Sox? No. 2 people, that's it. If you do, and you do, that's it. Okay, so we'll get that.
All right, we're going to start. Are you ready with your question?
Yeah.
We're going to start here. Please introduce yourself.
Hi. Hey Ian, my name is Gabe Castro. I'm a finance major here at Smith. Big fan. Follow you on LinkedIn. So my girlfriend, she interned at Eurasia Group last summer.
What happened?
She's working at Brunswick Group.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay.
So she actually has a question I want to relay to you regarding your recent piece on...
You are a good boyfriend. Right? Starts off, questions from my girlfriend.
She's
I like
currently
this guy
cringing
already.
right now, the fact that I even mentioned her. So, her question relates to your recent piece on Russia's influence in Venezuela.
Venezuela.
Yes.
Yep, last
So
week.
her question is, how does this fit into Russia's grand scheme to become a stronger global superpower?
So Russia is in serious decline, unlike China. And it's very interesting to compare China and Venezuela to Russia and Venezuela. The Chinese know that the world is long-term moving more towards them. They want stability. They don't want to cause too many waves. When they attack the U.S. in terms of cyber, they're trying to steal our IP so they can make more money. But they're not interfering in our election. They don't want to destroy the American economy. They don't want to undermine America because they need a robust global economy to grow, right? So in Venezuela, the Chinese actually went and met with the opposition, saying, hey, just in case you guys win, want to let you know, we want to work with you, here's the money you're going to owe us, all that kind of stuff, right? The Russians are in decline. Their human capital, their foreign direct investment, I mean, their economy right now is smaller than Italy, smaller than Canada, right? And they are deeply upset, and they blame us. And so what do they do in Venezuela? They sent a couple of planes filled with military advisors to support Maduro. They undermine us. How do they affect our elections? They try to weaken us. Brexit, same thing. Supporting the Yellow Vests in France, same thing. Like actually giving money to the National Front in France, same thing. I mean, this is the issue. So I believe that for Russia, it's not about trying to build great power status. It's about a serious sense that the U.S.-led global order is bad for them. They want to divide us, further divide. I'll give you another example, quick one. How many of you know Black Lives Matter? Show of hands. Everyone. How many of you heard of Blacktivist? 4. Okay? Blacktivist was a verified Facebook account popular during the elections in the U.S. 470,000 followers, more than Black Lives Matter at that point, right? That was created by the Russians. And it was actively...
It's a Facebook account.
Do you know?
No, I didn't know it. But so basically, this is about Russians spreading disinformation through social media.
Mm.